I would like to introduce Caleb Dobbins of the New Hampshire DOT and chair of the SICOP Steering Committee, and Brad Darr of the North Dakota DOT and chair of the Maintenance Operations TWG of the Maintenance Committee for a brief welcome and a kickoff for the meeting.
Thanks, Rick. Again, I'm Caleb Dobbins. I'm the state maintenance engineer for New Hampshire DOT. I'll be one of your co-hosts today. Before we get started here, I do want to thank Rick for all that he does, in case I forget before the end of the meeting, because if without his logistics support and things to make me try and look good, then we wouldn't be all here today. So I want to definitely pass that along to all of you for the tireless work that he does. Again, this is a good opportunity to get up to speed on all the different initiatives that are ongoing. We'll just be touching base on all of these today. So again, make sure you kind of write down the links and stuff that are going to get you to more information that all of these organizations have available to you. And with that, I'll pass it off to Brad.
Thank you, Caleb, and also thanks from me, Rick, for setting up these meetings. The result of COVID and our virtual meetings and allowed a lot more people to attend these briefings, which is awesome. And it also frees up time for our maintenance operations technical working group breakout sessions and allows us to do some more in-depth presentations. This year at our maintenance operations, or at the AASHTO Committee on Maintenance, the Maintenance Operations Technical Working Group, we got some, like I said, some more in-depth discussions. One of them's on the FHWA presentation on autonomous winter road maintenance decision-making. Caleb will be there talking about our snow and ice performance measure project that he's working on, an extended implementation project that goes with it. Clear Roads will be discussing the entry-level driver training project they did. FHWA will be talking about where they're at with their dynamic road optimization project. And we'll have a vendor there, Haas, on digital alerts for road safety. So if you haven't registered, register for the Committee on Maintenance meeting. We also have some interesting business that will go on at the meeting. Our snow and ice guide is NCHRP project is complete, and so we'll be looking at whether that warrants being an AASHTO guide. We have a potential synthesis on road closures and the utilization of control strategies, including preemptive road closures during weather events. And as always, we're looking for webinars that we work with SICOP on and put out showcases and maintenance topics. So if anybody's got any topics, feel free to email Rick or I. Thank you and enjoy the meeting.
Okay, so first up for our association briefings will be SICOP. Caleb, you're ready to go, and when you want to advance the slide, I'll just give me the high sign.
Great, thanks, Rick. So for those of you that are not aware, Steve Lund retired from Minnesota DOT last year. I replaced him as the chair for SICOP. I'm honored to take that role on. So for those of you that are not aware, SICOP is a pool fund federal highway group of snow and ice states. Some have more snow than others, as you can see from the map. Our main purpose is one of trying to figure out the resources that are available, seek out the research that's required and find the resources that are available to actually be able to do that research. So it's a very small contribution that each state participates in, hasn't changed for seemingly decades now. But again, the main purpose is to stay with the snow and ice community, figure out what the needs and whatnot are, and to organize those. So each AASHTO state or each AASHTO region has a chair or a regional rep. I'm the NASTO one. Heath, the best dressed person in the attendees here, is the SASHTO. Becky Elmarath is the MASTO, and Brad, who you just heard from, is WASHTO. So again, in addition to that, we also reach out to many of the partners that are out there as members. So we also have the representative from the Winter Maintenance Committee for TRB, the Road Weather Committee from TRB, the Committee on Transportation Systems Operation. We also have American Meteorology Society, Association of Public Works, and also the NACE, the county engineers, in addition to Federal Highway, AASHTO, and then obviously, as we already mentioned, Rick's great help. So it's a pretty good group of folks. If you want to move on there, Rick. So as I said, we look at different things that are ongoing. We have a triennial review that we need to do, like many of the different groups, and we look at our initiatives and some of the issues that are pertinent to the snow and ice community. So I probably won't read these. These are all within the website, but in recognition of trying to be as brief as quickly, we're looking at some of the top things. So route optimization. Big one coming up is going to be implementation of research. Research for the sake of research really isn't that helpful for folks. Connected and automated vehicles are pretty big nowadays. Looking at again the traffic management, again looking at that systems operation. Looking at our folks down to the south, he's people that are running into snow and ice that they haven't normally seen. So looking at some of those. And then looking at just basically the educational and the training. This group created training modules a number of years ago for snow and ice, and so it's just a matter of revising those to get them updated. No different really than the way that the snow and ice guide is being updated by AASHTO. So those are some of the issues that we're focusing on in the upcoming triennial period. You can move on. Okay. So in addition to that, we also have our fingers or our sights set on, as already mentioned by Brad, the performance metrics workshop. That's an implementation project that comes off of the NCHRP performance metrics research project. So that's to get it out. Again, there'll be workshops in all 4 AASHTO regions. We're starting with the NASTO, and it actually starts the week after the MAC meeting in July, so first week of August. As Brad had mentioned, the guide for snow and ice control operations is been finished, and that will be brought forth to the maintenance committee in AASHTO. Ongoing is the mechanical methods for snow and ice control operations, and then also looking at warnings and for relative to speed limits and things along the lines. That's in conjunction again with the Committee on Transportation Systems Operation. And Brad had already stolen some of my thunder relative to putting forth a synthesis on preemptive road closures. To try and avoid, some of these issues of, people being stranded and whatnot on roads. Sometimes it's better to just close a road if you're not going to be able to maintain it properly. So Rick is again big on a lot of this background stuff, but SICOP has put forward some surveys. We looked at staffing vacancy rates. I know here in New Hampshire, we continue to struggle with that, and I know it's a nationwide, it's not a regional issue that we're running into. So that was good information. Looking at also at road closures, was in conjunction with the Research Institute, and then some of the incident stress management programs that the different states and organizations have. So as these become available, these are things that Rick is very good at posting within the SICOP website. I will continue to shamelessly promote the SICOP website. There's a lot of really good information on that. If you haven't been there, just don't go to the website that is actually some kind of Spanish organization. So in addition, SICOP was asked to sit on the ranking and bring some folks in for the national papers that just came out from the PIARC, which is the International Winter Service and Road Resilience Congress. So I actually sat on that board that brought forth the U.S. nominations, and I'm happy to note that the winner of the Winter Service Award was a U.S. based paper. And it is actually, I think, what again, Brad stole from me, which will be talked about some more at MAC, which is the defensive some of the defensive driving stuff that's relative to snowplow operators. Although I think he was talking about the CDL training that was done. And then in addition, there was the winner for the road resiliency, which was efforts relative to resilient pavements. So another aspect that SICOP does is the winter ops talks. So thus far, as you can see, there's been 62 episodes produced over a number of years that SICOP has been putting these through. And as you can see from the guests, and you'll see from the next slide, the range of topics and the range of expertise on these is really, you know, a testament to how many different people have input within winter maintenance. You know, so again, you're looking at Canadian issues. You're looking at some folks that are academia, some states, some things also from you know, APWA and things along those lines. So it's a good background. This is, you know, a small sampling of the talks that are there. I stress again, everyone go to the SICOP website to get a full, you'll find something there that interests you, I can guarantee you. So just quickly in wrapping up, again, these are the 4 representatives relative to the AASHTO regions. In addition, as I said, there's a number of other groups that have input within SICOP, but again, I will continually point out that the SICOP website's right there in front of you. To make sure you don't go to the wrong one. I thank you all for your time, and I hope you have a great meeting for the rest of this.
Thanks, Caleb. Next on deck is Clear Roads, and presenting for Clear Roads will be Scott Lucas.
Thanks a lot, Rick. Appreciate it. Go to the next slide. Yep, and next slide after that. Okay, so just for some folks that may not know, Clear Roads, we're a member, a consortium of 37 member states, and all focused around testing and development of advancing different types of materials and equipment for winter maintenance operations. Next slide. So kind of our core activities, like I said, we evaluate winter maintenance materials, equipment, and methods, develop specifications, recommendations, studies, and promoting innovative techniques and technologies, and support technology transfer by developing practical field guides and training curricula to promote the results of research project. We, like I said, we're really big on research, and you know, kind of sharing that stuff. As Caleb said before, research sitting on the shelf doesn't really do anything. So implementation is a very, very big thing for Clear Roads as well. Next slide, please. So this is our website, and you can go there to get a lot of good information there. You know, you see the different folks that as part of Clear Roads that represent the different states there. You see details from our projects that are currently ongoing, projects that are in the past have done, and some different videos and things like that, and also some Q&A sessions we have on there. Other winter maintenance news is on there, and also our meeting minutes from our 2 meetings. We meet both in the springtime and the fall of each year to go over different topics. Okay, next meeting, next slide. So new research is coming up. There's a comprehensive guide to pre-wetting application rates and methods. It's one of the things that we're going to do is to make sure we are getting the right application rates on our pre-wetting. A lot of discussion on that is just how much is the right amount of, for pre-wet. Next one is the best management practice for liquid chloride storage in pumping systems. I know we've had a lot of issues, even in our state in Ohio, of transferring different liquid de-icers and then also storing them. So this will be a very interesting topic here. Effective additives for lowering the freezing point of de-icing salts. So different additives we can add. Evaluation of direct liquid application of salt brine versus granular salt as measured through various performance metrics. And that was one that a few folks have asked about. That is, we know the advantage of the liquid de-icers, but just what is that performance measure on that? and also use of dashboards for winter operations. That's our new research is coming up. Next slide, please. So another thing we do is we have our Clear Roads ongoing initiatives. Our first one up there is our annual survey of state winter maintenance data. We've been doing that for 8 years. The image there on the screen there of the United States kind of shows the different data from each state. So it's more than just Clear Road states. It's every state that will actually reply back with the data for that. And you can see like 2 different criteria going to be matched up for that. We also are in a new home for the Clear Roads qualified products list, is formerly the PNS or Pacific Northwest Snowfighters. So for our liquid de-icers and other de-icers and that, we have our standards out there. We have testing protocols and that must be achieved before people can actually have their list put on our QPL list. We also have the Winter Maintenance Product Proficiency Sample Program. And another thing that we have is just kind of a new program is the Clear Roads Equipment Online Database. And we're actually just collecting information on that database right now. Next slide, please. So we have a lot of project in progress. I'm not going to read all through these, but I want to point out a couple of them here. One of the big ones is number 2, standard testing procedure for icing, ice melting capacity of de-icers. This process is kind of aimed at getting the AASHTO approval if everything works well. So we'd just like to kind of focus everybody's attention on that. It's actually something to kind of hopefully be a replacement for the Sharps 2 test for ice melting capacity with de-icers. Also, a grip sensor technology, sol application, project number 8, another one down there that we've been looking at quite a bit. And another one I'm on actually is the evaluation of electrical vehicle technology and alternative fuels for winter operations. We see a lot of different alternative fuels, electric, CNG and things like that for different vehicles and that. So we're trying to get ahead of the curve and find out what information is available on those different technologies out there. Next slide. So recently completed projects. We have expanding the application rate guidance for salt brine blends for direct liquid application and icing. Also recruitment and retention of highway maintenance workers. That's a big one we see across all different venues. I've seen it with townships and counties and cities, as well as all the other DOTs. Seem like it's having issues with recruitment retention. So this was something that was very interesting project, and I encourage people to look into that. Measuring the effectiveness of tow plows and wing plows. And we're getting into newer technologies out there, and to answer those questions, why should we invest in tow plows and wing plows? And the research project can answer some of those questions for you. Synthesis of technical requirements and considerations for automated snowplow route optimization. That basically was a project that was set up to basically help a person who's going to be writing an RFP to a vendor in order to do a route optimization program for the snowplow operations and that. So just some helpful tips, some do's and don'ts, what was learned throughout the other states. Winter driving safety, that's another big one out there. And snowplow operator and supervisor training is one of the ones that's been downloaded quite a few times out there, gain information for folks on training programs. And last one down there is the entry-level driver's training program. Brad and Caleb both spoke about that program. Very happy with that program. It's been downloaded, I think, more times than anything else we've had for projects, but getting a lot of great feedback from cities and townships and villages and everyone else that's used that program. So I have a lot of good interest in that. Okay, next slide. And just more information. Here's our current chair is Patty Caswell. I'm the vice chair or incoming chair for the group. Greg Wadley is our person from CTC who kind of administers Clear Roads and is a good contact for all general questions and that. And real thanks to Minnesota DOT for Tom Peters and Katie Walker for administering everything like that. It's a heavy lift for anybody to take on a pooled fund, and really appreciate what Minnesota DOT does for Clear Roads, because I couldn't do it without them, that's for sure. All right. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Scott. Thanks for a great briefing on Clear Roads. Next up is Aurora, another pooled fund study, and John Borquist from The Minnesota DOT is the Aurora chair. And so, John, whenever you're ready.
Good morning, and yes, my name is John Bjorquist. I'm the ARWIS project manager with the Minnesota Department of Transportation, and we are one of the members of the Aurora Pooled Fund, and it is our administrative lead state is the Iowa DOT, and the program is managed by the Iowa State University Institute of Transportation, and we really couldn't get along very well without those folks, so they do a lot for us. Go on to the next one, Rick. And as Rick said, I'm the current chair, and which is a rotating thing. And next year's chair is going to be Tonya Lohman from the Missouri DOT. And you can see Tina Greenfield. She's very active and with the Aurora program and many other things, which she will admit to. But we have to really appreciate the program management done by both Zach Hands and Neil Hawkins with Iowa State, and we couldn't do it without them, like I said before. Go to the next slide, please. Aurora, which is a pooled fund study for all the ARWIS groups, currently has 18 members in the pooled fund, and the primary purpose of this pooled fund is for us to share ideas and information. I mean, we have a lot of questions that go on back and forth, and we help each other a lot. And there's a lot of useful information that we are able to share with each other. But the primary emphasis of our pooled fund, shown in the next slide, has to do with the projects, the research projects. I mean, for us, the primary purpose of the pooled fund, the Aurora pooled fund, is to be able to do the research that each state can't do themselves. And there are many, many useful projects that we look into in regards to the ARWIS that are around the country. And so many of the things that we've done, this is just a few of the completed projects. And if you want to look at the more detailed list, you can always go to the Aurora website, which will be referenced soon, I think. But you can look it up and look at all the different projects that we have completed and the different papers and or documentation that have come from them. But there have been very many useful things, I think, for many of the states, learning when is the best time to start replacing things in regards to life cycle cost, or where you should locate things if you're expanding. It's been very helpful. I know for me, because Minnesota is currently in the middle of a expansion project where we're adding more ARWIS, and all of this information has been very, very useful. Next slide. Currently, we're working on a number of things and they're dealing primarily with newer technology and how that can be utilized for road weather information. And there are primarily we're looking at, with that technology, how can that newer technology be implemented into road weather information, and how we can improve the information that we're providing to, say, all the various for the states, you know, their maintenance areas and decision making, and for the traveling public in the various 511s that we have, and we provide that information. So being able to utilize so much of this new technology is what we're really looking to pursue. Next, Rick. So with that in mind, you know, there's the other projects we're currently in the process of considering has to do a lot with the integration of ARWIS and connected vehicles. There are more and more opportunities where we're able to provide information to the traveling public and to help them safely drive. And a lot of it has to do with like an ARWIS that is, say, working or automatically setting variable speed limits, or putting messages on DMS so that people know to slow down, and which doesn't always happen. But there's also a lot of integration that we're working on in order to provide information to the traveling public and to provide them with a safe commute. Next, Rick. So the Aurora group itself meets in person like twice a year. We have a spring and fall meeting, and we're at each of these meetings. We usually have the opportunity to tour an area like a particular state that we're going to and hear about that state's ARWIS efforts and what they're doing. We're able to also review a lot of say the local National Weather Service office and find out how different areas are doing things differently. And also at our meetings, we do a lot of administrative things. And so we are currently working on trying to finalize our project list for this spring. And we go through a very extensive vetting process, and we thank both Zach and Neil for the work that they do to go through and get everything set up for us. And they've pare down the list for us, and then at these various board meetings we're able to decide which projects we want to pursue and fund for our research efforts. And that's a big part of a lot of what we do. And in regards to our meetings, though, we have our next meeting coming up is going to be this fall in the Twin Cities. And we're also including what we call the Friends of Aurora, where we have vendors come and share information, and we try and make it a situation where it's not them selling things, but at least it's an idea exchange so that we can find ways to improve road weather information. So that's about all I have for today. Rick, I thank you for all your work in organizing this, and I thank all of our supporters, both like Tina and Zach and Hans, and you can see the Aurora webpage. So if you would like to find more information, please go and check us out. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you, John. Appreciate it. I put the Aurora website link in the chat pod so people can go there and grab it if they need, want to check it out. Next up is Pooled Fund Study, the Maintenance Decision Support System, and that's going to be jointly presented by Dave Huff of South Dakota DOT and Sean Trulson of DTN, who provides MDSS support. So Dave and Sean, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you, Rick. Let's go into the next slide. Pleasure to talk with you. Sean and I will be making the presentation, and we can go to the next slide. We are a pool fund study. It started out with 4 states in 2002. It grew to include many different states over its lifetime, and there are 11 states in the group right now. It's kind of like every other pooled fund study. We contribute funding that we use to sponsor development and improvement of a maintenance decision support system, research that helps to advance the science behind MDSS. And DTN is now the contractor for the pool fund study with us. Next one. I think the reasons for winter maintenance decision support are ones that all of you are familiar with. They're rising expectations from traveler and commercial travelers. Costs of labor, material, and equipment are in a time of always constrained funding. It's hard to anticipate what some weather conditions are going to happen, and the response of pavement to weather is quite complex depending on a lot of factors. And some of you have already talked about innovative new emerging de-icing chemicals and techniques and how to handle those and how to make best use of them. One of the reasons for MDSS is to try to minimize the use of de-icing chemicals out of environmental concerns. And the last bullet on the list here is the fact that we have a lot of turnover and changing in staff, and the workforce isn't as experienced as it used to be. Next slide. And Sean, go ahead.
Thanks, Dave. This slide is showing in a very basic format the very complex modeling of the road surface and how it's affected by the characteristics of the road itself, the current conditions, the predicted conditions, and what is being done on the roadway, including treatments. So it's a very complex heat balanced model that is being developed or has been developed by the MDSS Pooled Fund over the last 20 years. And it is able to look at the road surface and then also provide treatment recommendations for going forward to address the road conditions and the level of service desired. So it'll give application rates, optimal timing, and treatment types and materials to not only achieve the level of service, but also reduce chemicals to the point where it is going to be the safest possible for the environment. It will also predict future road conditions, which actually have started becoming useful for 511 systems. So it's transferred from the MDSS to a 511. Key here is that this research is being developed for operational use, and about 20 state DOTs are using this technology, both within and without the MDSS pooled fund. Next slide, please. This image shows an actual plow cam image and the road conditions that it is looking at going forward, but also how the MDSS is modeling it. And you can see from the profile on the bottom that it is modeling the wheel tracks, it's modeling the percentage of ice, the pavement temperature, etc. So it's taking in a lot of information and able to model reality. Next slide, please. Key to this modeling situation is input from actual plow trucks. So the MDSS is able to take in what are actual plows doing at the moment, and how is that going to be affecting the road conditions going forward. It's not necessary to use AVL MDC data with spreader control information, but it makes the model more accurate, certainly. And the MDSS also has a component to bring information into the plow trucks to allow the plow operators to get information on current conditions, treatment recommendations, and other things like radar and other trucks that may be around their plow route. Next slide, please. This is the web MDSS interface that has been developed via the pooled fund. It is a very complex interface that shows information through maps, graphs, profiles, tables. It provides a lot of information in a color-coded format. What you're looking at here is radar with route-based and point-based forecasts for road conditions and treatment recommendations. It is set up to provide quite a complex set of alerting. And you can see at the bottom, this is a saved storm. So the system is able to save storm for training and analytical purposes. And also built into WebMDSS are a number of performance management tools that are very, very useful to take in operational information and calculate performance measurements that can be achieved by the state DOTs using it. Next slide, please. In the current phase, we're in phase 12 of the pooled fund study. They're 2-year phases, and we just finished year 1 of phase 12. And as part of this, we are developing more capabilities for operational analytics. And this screen is bringing in different pieces of the MDSS into one view, so that what has been done and timeframes, et cetera, can be analyzed in one space. And we're using this as part of what we call the Assessment of Recommendations project, which is also polling the plow operators and supervisors as to, are the recommendations from MDSS accurate and useful within the system? So we are getting feedback, and that feedback helps us to determine where to go forward. Next slide, please. These are the key R&D tasks that we have been performing in phase 12 of the pooled fund study. I just wanted to point out a few because I know time is kind of tight here, but MDSS supports tow plows, but we are enhancing that capability, working with AVL MDC providers to make that more accurate and more useful within MDSS. I also wanted to point out the liquid support. Certainly MDSS supports liquid treatments, but as these become more and more used in operations and more complex, we are expanding our support within MDSS. And we're also looking at integration of mobile RWIS into the MDSS. We can currently display that, but actually actively utilizing data from mobile RWIS to help with the road condition analytics and treatment recommendations. And that's bringing us into a smaller road segment approach. So look for some interesting work coming forward as we continue in phase 12 next year. Back to you, Dave.
Yeah, and the next slide. So a lot of states in the pool fund study have gone to some extensive deployment of MDSS. In South Dakota, we have up till last year had kind of a sampling of roadways on the state highway networks. About a third of our routes were in MDSS, but we've expanded to the whole state based on a study of the benefits and costs of the expansion. We're also in the process of equipping all of our snowplows with mobile data collectors, and then doing some staff training and policy clarifications for staff to make best use of the MDSS. The next slide. The study that we did showed that although we would spend a sizable amount in putting equipment into trucks and so forth, the benefit cost ratio just for agency cost was a little better than 1-to-1. If we included the safety costs, the safety benefits that would accrue to the public, the benefit cost ratio was well over 3-to-1. And based on that analysis, we decided to go to statewide coverage of MDSS. Minnesota is essentially statewide coverage, as is Nebraska and Wisconsin, and Michigan has a sizable deployment, as does Indiana. And so this is passed from just the experimental stage into real production work. Next slide. This is a project history. I'm not going to go through all of this, of course, but just to show you that the project has been active now for 20 years, starting out with the basic development of MDSS, moving through field trials, moving to limited deployments to broad deployments, and now in this stage of the work, really refinements and enhancements to the user interface and analytics. Next slide. The pool fund study still is open to anyone who would like to join. It gives you a chance to contribute to the development of the MDSS, to steer the direction that the work happens. I would say that the states that have been involved in the MDSS have contributed as much intellectually to the project as the consultants have. And so it's really been a team effort to not only develop technology, but to make sure that the technology addresses real DOT needs. Next slide. If anyone is interested, please contact me. And Rick, I think we'll leave it at that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dave. Thank you, Sean, for filling us in on MDSS. I know I was involved in that project some 20 years ago before it was even called MDSS. And I know there was some really high hopes for this, and it's good to see them pan out into something that's so beneficial.
Thanks, Rick.
So we're just a little bit ahead of schedule. And what I would propose to do is that we do take our short 10-minute break. Hopefully we're all back and we're ready to go for the second segment of our briefings today, which will kick off with the Transportation Research Board Winter Maintenance Committee, and Tina Greenfield, who is from the Iowa DOT and the past chair. So Tina, it's all yours.
All right. Thanks, Rick. Good day, everybody. Go ahead and move on to the next slide. Here we go. And the next one as well.
There we go.
There we are. All right. So just starting out with our roster. And I should probably even back up just a little bit for those who may not be familiar with TRB or the committees, but Winter Maintenance Committee is one of hundreds of committees that the Transportation Research Board has in its organization. And we are committed to everything that falls into the winter maintenance realm, which would be anything from equipment to de-icing materials to different techniques, strategies, training, and so on and so forth. We have membership from all over the world, and we did have a committee rotation just last year. So some of these folks, actually many of these folks, are in their first year of serving on the committee. And go on and the next slide, please. And I wanted to just talk about some of the recent happenings that we have been up to over this past year particularly. So we did have a couple very well attended meetings. We had one that was at the finally back to in-person TRB annual meeting in Washington, D.C. in January, but it was our meeting, our committee meeting, I should say, was also kind of a virtual hybrid. So we had quite a few people who were able to not only make it in person, but also attend online during January. And then prior to that, we had enough business with some of the things that I'll talk about in just a bit that we did a virtual pre-meeting over Teams in November to try to get some things ready and offload a few of the items, agenda items, so that we weren't quite so intensive when we got to January. One of the other big things that has happened recently is Anna Arvidsson from Sweden is the new chair, and she began her term on April 15. So I am, she was unable to make it today to this meeting, so that's why I'm giving the briefing here. But she is now the chair moving forward. Prior to my departure, we all worked together, Anna and I worked together on a new triennial strategic plan that was due back in March. It is pending its final approvals, but we're pretty much hopeful that what we submitted is going to be what ends up getting posted. I'm going to talk about that in just a bit. And then also the Winter Maintenance Committee, as well as the Road Weather Committee, are going to be planning a tri-event series in this year and the next, which we will Paul and I will discuss jointly in just a bit after I'm done with my committee update. Go ahead and to the next slide, please, Rick. So our triennial strategic plan, as I mentioned, was due and it was submitted to TRB in March. Some of the things that we put in there are our desire to help speed the pace of research implementation. So our committee is going to be pursuing many activities and efforts to help move the needle a little bit. There's a lot of good work out there, and we just want to make sure that it gets in the hands of agencies, leads to meaningful and successful change. And if there's anything that we need to do to help that implementation, we're going to be focusing on that in the next couple of years. We're also going to be pursuing a little bit more on the impact of winter operations on the environment, also on human health and operators. Doing a lot more with automation and connected vehicles, advanced navigation systems for tow plows, or not just tow plows, I should say, any kind of plow. And also some of the things that winter maintenance might have to do with the navigation of autonomous vehicles. Also improving resilience to extreme events and getting a little bit more in depth on how different organizations handle different things, and maybe doing some work with other people outside of the winter maintenance area on this regard to see if there are things that we can learn from them. Of course, I think 3 presenters have mentioned it already, but hiring and retention is kind of a big deal right now for us. And then finally, we have some efforts along the lines of an electrification of the fleet alternative fuel vehicles within fleet, and then also other what we would call transformative technologies that are on the horizon that are situated to come charging into our realm or change the world in which we know it. So go on to the next slide, please, Rick. Some specific goals, again, the tri-event, which we'll talk about here. And we're going to plan more activities with the Resilience and Climate Committee. There are also some human resources committees and others outside of the traditional just winter maintenance area that we think that we should really learn from. And then we have, we're going to be creating some task force within our committee to support research implementation and really champion those efforts. We also are going to continue updating our website, which right now is very much out of date or very much not updated yet, depending upon whether you're looking at the old or the new website. So that's something that we need to address. We're also going to be looking for presentations from agencies that have protocol in place for preemptive closures or other emergency actions, basically keeping a pulse on what agencies are doing, particularly when really extreme events come through. And we think that having a little bit of state or agency showcase may really help different agencies get some really quick ideas that they can maybe take home. And then, of course, continue improving our committee diversity and breadth of experience and the different types of agencies that we have within our committee and within our committee activities. So next slide. I am going to ask Paul Pisano if he's in and ready to go ahead and unmute, because this tri-event is, as I mentioned a couple of times, is a joint effort between my Winter Maintenance Committee and Paul's Road Weather Committee. And we have three, as you might expect, 3 events that are going to be coming up that are in various levels of planning. We have a webinar that we are in the process of requesting, and we are hoping for a November 2022 rollout on that. Again, the date is to be determined. Well, and even the event is yet to be authorized, but we're requesting it. And then we do have an approved workshop that we have already put in for that is going to be called Resilient and Sustainable Approaches for Road Weather and Winter Maintenance. That is going to be taking place at the January 2023 annual meeting in Washington, D.C. Don't know what day that is going to be, but that is approved as well. And then we are closely working with TRB on getting our final dates scheduled for the International Road Weather and Winter Maintenance Conference. That is slated for summer 2023, I think early summer 2023, again at Washington, D.C. at the National Academy's Keck Center. Next slide. And Paul, if you would like to take on this slide as the other half of our tri-event, go for it.
Thank you, Tina. Right, so again, there's a lot of very close working relationship between the Winter Maintenance Committee and the Road Weather Committee, and a lot of shared concerns and challenges. So we're really lucky. We have enjoyed working with Tina and now Anna and the Winter Maintenance Committee to conduct this event. And that's going to be really, it's going to culminate with the international conference next summer. But we really wanted to maximize the value of that conference by having a couple of pre-events that are going to help to frame what we discuss and what's presented at the international conference. So the webinar will be the first intro to a couple of key topics and about advancements in weather forecasting and what some agencies are doing today to manage these changes in events and to be more resilient and sustainable. And then coming together in person in January at the workshop to continue the discussion of what's presented at the webinar and to get to lead into some really good conversations and presentations at the conference. So things like emerging technologies, how to use data to improve practice. Again, there's, as Sean alluded to in the MDSS presentation, a lot of new data becoming available. How do you maximize the use of that data for better road weather prediction, preparation, response, particularly as we see more unusual or extreme weather events. What do we need to know about the events, and then what do we need to know to best manage the events? And then also, how can that data be used and the technologies be used for long-term planning, and then as well to reduce environmental impacts, particularly materials management processes for winter maintenance. And then, so again, the whole idea is to ultimately improve practice and get to what can operating agencies do differently to be more effective, be more efficient, and continue to maintain safety on the roads as we have all these various challenges coming at us. How does that sound, Tina? Did I capture that all right?
I think you did.
All right. So I guess go on to the next slide. So, and now I'm going to dive more deeply into the Road Weather Committee. So I am the chair of the committee, and let's see, where do I start? So the Road Weather Committee is also part of the Highway Maintenance section, and which is the section that the Winter Maintenance Committee is in, and we've always had a very close relationship with the Winter Maintenance Committee. Although when the Road Weather Committee was first set up, it was actually at the section level, and then it came down into the maintenance section, which is great in that it gives us again really strong ties to not only the Winter Maintenance Committee but the other committees within this section. But it is important, and then while a lot of what we talk about and even having pictures like this tend to think of winter as the biggest challenge, we are not limited to winter and winter maintenance with regards to transportation operations and maintenance. We are also looking at all types of weather throughout the year, what we can do to minimize the effects of weather. So I'm the chair up, I think, until next year, April, for my first term, 3-year term, and if they'll have me, I think continue on for another 3 years past that. Next slide. As with copying Tina's slides, this is the current membership of the committee. In fact, you'll even see some names that are common between our two committees. Again, just reflect the strong relationship. Kathy Elenius, in fact, was the previous chair before me, and has been very active and supportive among many others. But we also have friends. There are friends of the committee, which are not listed here, of course. There are almost 200 friends of the committee, and I would encourage anybody who is interested in what we're doing as a committee to become a friend. Really easy to do. You just go to MyTRB and you set up a MyTRB account, which is simple and free, and then you can go to the committee part of the MyTRB website and just say become a friend. And I often include friends in in almost all of the correspondence that I send out to the committee to keep people engaged, and friends are able to participate and assist in a lot of the various activities. The next slide. Some of the committee highlights from my side of things. The big thing for us this past year has been updating our triennial strategic plan, and I've got a couple of slides of that I'll speak to. But also in the past year or so, we've had some very interesting and engaging panel discussions. In particular, at the 2021 annual meeting, we had a presentation, a panel discussion with some experts in the meteorological and transportation world, including Rick, to talk about the communication gap between the meteorological and transportation research communities. And the point there is that there are millions and millions of dollars worth of weather-related research, meteorological research taking place that could benefit the transportation community, but aren't reaching us. And the intent of this discussion was to talk about how to build a stronger bridge between the meteorological communities and the transition communities, particularly with regards to the research. I think and while a lot of great points were discussed, I mean, I think there's still a lot of work to do in this area, but I think to me, it's a very critical part of where there are potential successes, because again, there's a lot of great work that's gone on that would be of value to us that we just don't even know about. And then during the 2021 mid-year meeting, so about a little less than a year ago, we had a really great panel discussion about the evolution of road weather observations. We had people talking about the range of data that we can get about road conditions, starting with the very traditional environmental sensor stations that are installed along the side of the road, to vehicle-based observations and other emerging ways of getting information about weather and road conditions. And again, harking back to Sean's and Dave's presentation, they talked about better use of the mobile ops for MDSS. That's exactly what we want to talk about as well. And other things like if you happen to catch, I want to say Kevin Doobie from Arizona DOT's discussion with Rick on Rick's SICOP Talks Winter Ops podcast, which is a great podcast, by the way. He talked about wanting to explore the use of grip and friction data to better manage the system, and I think that's definitely an emerging area and something we talked about in that panel. I think both of those recordings are available if you want to look for them. I could take them out for you if anybody's interested in going back and watching any of those. Other things that we've been doing, of course, is developing and promoting research needs statements, one of our critical functions. We have a call for papers that is currently open. I want to shout out to Joe Horton for for drafting that, really. From Caltrans, Joe is the research coordinator for the committee, or research subcommittee chair, I guess I would say. So that is open. Papers are due August 1st. We will have a mid-year meeting on August 12th. If you're interested in attending that, again, all are welcome, just let me know. And then, as mentioned before, we've got this tri-event that has been taken out. We've been doing a lot of work planning and have this week to put in our request for the webinar. Next slide. I don't know how I'm doing on time, but just so a couple things just to highlight the TRB plan. First of all, again, shout outs to Sean Trulson and also Mike Burton from Campbell Scientific. Those two led the initiative to draft our TRB plan along with a number of volunteers, including both members and friends of the committee. They really stepped up to the plate. Back in January at the end of the meeting, we were talking about the need to get our first draft in by March 1st. And because of Sean and Mike's work, we were able to achieve that. And we had minimal comments to address. So it is moving forward. And and this is what we're all about. I mean, really, this is high level, I think, but really captures the essence of the committee, which is that we are aiming to better understand weather and its connection with safe and efficient movement of people and goods, and how to then address those and better manage the system. So the 6 emerging critical issues that were identified are listed here. Won't go into all of them in detail, again, in the interest of time, but just to highlight things like second item there, the megadata, which gets back to that conversation I had earlier about the panel discussion on road weather ops and how do you make better use of the data, particularly data coming from private sector sources. You know, we as a community tend to feel most comfortable with the data we collect, whether it's from our own RO sensors or from our own vehicles. But there's, we're seeing a number of agencies that are saying, hey, wait, maybe it's okay for me to use this data come from other places, as long as I've got the confidence in the data and it's useful to me. So we want to explore that further. In knowledge exchange, again, more on the other aspects of road weather, looking at things like weather-based congestion, and as with the Winter Maintenance Committee, the role that connected automated vehicles could play in road weather management. And of course, we do have a strong commitment to diversity and doing everything we can to see that reflected in our committee membership and our activities. Next slide. So for each of those topics, we are going through a process of discovery, discussion, dissemination, right? So they're each of them we can go many different ways with all of those, and we have a three-phase process to address them. First, what do we know? What don't we know about each of these areas? What can we focus on to better make advancements in those areas? And then how do we get the word out, particularly from a perspective of implementation for operating agencies? And then again, we've got this tri-event that's going to be touching on a lot of that, again, with things like sustainability and how do we manage our salt use and resilience. How do we better manage the system as these extreme events occur? And we will working closely not only with the Winter Maintenance Committee, but there's another committee, the Extreme Weather and Resilience Committee, that we will be working with, among others. Next slide. We have a website up that has all this information and more, including the call for papers, which is here. And I actually don't have the URL for the committee. I can post that in the chat in a minute. But anyway, so again, encourage you to become a friend if you aren't already, and happy to take any questions if we have time. I think that was my last slide.
Yes, it is, Paul. Thank you so much. And thanks to Tina as well for providing us those briefings on what's happening with TRB in the winter maintenance and road weather fronts. Paul, I don't see anything popping up in the chat, but if anybody does have any questions for Paul or Tina or any of the other presenters, please feel free to put them into the chat pod, and we'll get to them as we go along. So
sorry, ignore my Italian. Can I delete
yeah. Okay, so next on the agenda is our international sister committee, if you will. The PIARC Winter Service Technical Committee is a collection of international agencies, and to make the briefing for PIARC is the committee chair, Peter Nutz from Vienna. Peter, the floor is yours if you're still hooked up, and I hope you are.
Yes, I am. Thanks, Rick.
Outstanding.
I think I might be the only one who prepared no slides, but I'll talk you through it. So PIARC is an international organization. It's quite old. It's founded in 1909, so it's 113 years old now. And members could be governments, regional authorities, like there are 2 cities, or collective members like companies, universities, or individual members. And PIARC works in 4-year cycles. So each 4 years, the technical committees are created new. And there are some of these technical committees that are permanent committees, and winter service is one of them. So winter services is a committee in each cycle. And the reason why this is so, because it's PIARC is for the acronym for Permanent International Association of Road Congresses. So it started out with road congresses. And usually it starts with a kickoff meeting in Paris. So the organization is based in Paris, and it starts with a kickoff meeting. And 3.5 years later, it's the last meeting at the Congress. And so there's a Congress every 4 years, a World Road Congress. And in between these World Road Congresses, there are winter maintenance congresses or winter service congresses, also every 4 years. And with the last Congress was in this year, in February 2022 in Calgary, which would be a nice trip. Unfortunately, it wasn't, because it was an online-only Congress. And well, I spent a week here in Austria and would love to go to Calgary, but well. But the last Congress was not only winter service, it was also resilience. So PIARC started to add another issue to this winter service Congress to broaden to get more visitors to the Congress, essentially. So what's PIARC also doing? We are organizing seminars and workshops. The main difference between seminar and the workshop is seminars are usually in low or middle income countries and workshops are in high income countries. These are typical 2-day events where you get a local organization and you're presenting winter service and so on. We had the last seminar on winter service in Kiev, Ukraine, which is in December 2021. So 3 months before the war started, and it was, well, it's you go with mixed feelings now, or with even worse feelings in the news today. But yeah, so it's meetings, it's workshops, and there are also TC meetings twice a year where we meet up. And the good thing about PIARC is that most of the products that are produced are free to download. And Rick just posted the link, so thanks, Rick, for that. And you need to register, but usually it's for free, and you can download the documents, the reports, and so on. So that's for free. It's a good thing. So what's the reports on winter service? We got this cycle. We got 3 reports. One is we had this report more or less in the last cycle is the development of application of methods of de-icing chemicals, and which was an overview of the state of the art and best practices. So we asked our members, are you using brine? Do you use preventive spreading? Are you using pre-wetted salt? And what amount of salt do you use in typical weather scenarios? And we collected this and put it together, and it gives a good overview of international methods and strategies. And there are, you can see that there are like for the amount of de-icing agents used, there is most of the countries use the same amount, but you can still see some countries that are either using very much or very little, and that's quite interesting to see. And we are going to review this last report now this cycle again, and to see has something changed. We see that brine or liquid solutions really increased of use. In Austria, we use it a lot, and we see this is in international countries as well, so that's good. And another great product is the Snow and Ice data book. So this is reviewed every 4 years, and we asked our members to produce a short overview of the winter service in their country, in their home country. And we've got, I think, 21 or 22 countries in the last Snow and Ice data book. And so we are showing what's the typical weather conditions, what methods do you use, and so on and so forth. And it's good to get an overview on an international level. And most of the time, usually you see some reports or some projects that you think, well, that's something that's very interesting in, and we've done the same, or we just wanted to start such a project. And it's good to see you don't need to do things twice, so you can back up on the experience from others. So it's the Snow and Ice data book. So about the issues, the reports we are doing, just let me go through the issues. So the first is the integration of new technologies in winter service. It's mostly about salting and spreading techniques, but you're also looking at snow clearing. Is there anything new about snow clearing? A plow is usually rather simple, but we are looking for something new. And of course, other winter service technologies. And also we've tried to look on the spectrum of road design. So are there things in road design that would ease winter service? We are looking for these things, and this is one issue. So this is the report. We're looking for new issues, for new best practices, and we are also doing the same questionnaire we did 4 years ago to see if there's any progress. Then we've got the issue of winter service in urban areas. We are looking, because winter service in urban areas, it's much different to on highways or on rural roads. It's you got completely different people using roads. It's not cars, it's mostly pedestrians, or a lot of pedestrians, a lot of cyclists, a lot of public transport and cars, and all of them together, and a very, very small amount of space. So there's nowhere to put the snow, and all these difficulties in towns, and we're looking for best practices there as well, and we're putting together these and to show what some cities are doing. And there are really good quiet bits you can pick out and say, well, that's a good idea, I want to try this one. And we're also looking at the implication of connected and automated vehicles on meter service, and I've seen this. This is a huge topic also on other committees I just saw. So we're looking into this as well, but mostly based on what was the input on the last Congress in Calgary. And of course, one big issue for each cycle in Winter Service Committee is the organization of the next Congress, of the next Winter Service Congress. So about the future Congresses, the next World Road Congress is in October 2023 in Prague in Czech Republic. If you want to submit an abstract, I think it's still open until end of August, or 26th of August, the submission. And the next Winter Service Congress will be in Chambéry in France in 2026. So these are the next dates to look for. So thanks.
Thank you so much, Peter, for filling us in on the PIARC Winter Service Technical Committee. I know both Paul and I have had the honor and the pleasure of serving on that committee, and there's a tremendous amount of great work that's being done there. So, Peter, thank you for participating in the national briefing and filling us in on what's happening with the Winter Service Technical Committee.
Thanks.
Next up is the American Meteorological Society. And Paul talked about the AMS. They've got a committee on ITS and road weather, and Amanda Anderson is our committee liaison for SICOP. So Amanda, the floor is yours.
Great, thank you so much. So the AMS Road Weather Committee is designed to help build and strengthen the bond and communication between the meteorological and the transportation communities to support interdisciplinary solutions to reduce the human and financial costs of adverse weather on the roadways. So I'm just going to talk briefly about some of the activities we've done in the past year and what we're looking forward to in the coming year. So on the next slide is one of our major activities, which is the American Meteorological Society's annual meeting. We always host a weather and road session at this meeting. This past year in January, we had 6 great papers that were presented. I believe it was 6. Unfortunately, it was supposed to be a hybrid event that ended up, I think, the week before going fully virtual with the Omicron variant. But we are hopeful that next year will be an in-person event. It will be in Denver, Colorado, and unfortunately it is the same week as TRB this year. That happens, I think, every 3 years or so. But the theme for the annual meeting, which revolves around data, is very relevant to the kind of work that we do in the observation space for road weather. So there will be a lot of health and safety considerations. We would love to have some transportation folks presenting in our road weather session. The slide's a little out of date now because the call for papers had actually came out. So I posted a link to the call for papers, and it's actually due the 24th of August, not the 30th of September. They moved it up about a month on us. If you have any questions about the call for papers, or you have any yourself or any colleagues would be interested in presenting would love to see those get submitted in the next couple of months. We're also working with the AMS president, and there's a series of presidential sessions during the meeting of how transportation weather could be represented in those sessions. There's a lot of relevant ones, spectrum, observations. On the next slide are a couple of other meetings we've had this past year in addition to the annual meeting. One was the AMS Summer Community Meeting, which was held virtually at the end of September. The theme of this meeting was opportunities in academic, private, and public collaborations. And the committee hosted and organized a roundtable on weather and transportation. Bill Mahoney representing academic, Brenda Boyce from the private sector, and Tony Coventry from Federal Highways were panelists. We also had organized a session on self-driving vehicles at the AMS Washington Forum, which was a hybrid meeting that was held this past April. The Washington Forum is a platform for examining public policy issues that occur across the weather, water, and climate enterprise. We had, again, a really great panel. We had Daniel Rothenberg from Waymo representing the OEM side of self-driving vehicles, our own Tina Greenfield from Iowa DOT, Mike Chapman from MyRadar, and then Brittany Welch representing the academic community from University of Utah. And then I just wanted to thank Paul Pisano for helping initiate the summer community meeting session and then also helping to organize the Washington Forum session. On the next slide is our upcoming meeting that we're working on. We just met last week to start planning on this. Some of you may have attended the Automated Vehicle Summit that occurred in 2018. We wanted to hold off with the pandemic because we felt it was really important for this meeting to be in person. So now that there are starting to be in-person meetings again, we're moving forward. We're aiming for next spring, maybe sometime between March and May. And we've been talking to University of Michigan in Ann Arbor about hosting this event. They have the M-City facility, which is an automated vehicles test bed. And then the previous summit had one day dedicated to surface, one day dedicated to airborne. We were discussing maybe having more of a ground-based focus this year, but bringing in surface relevant airborne discussion and research as well. So we'll likely have some combination of sessions that have speakers, sessions with panelists, and then networking opportunities, as well as an opportunity to do some touring of M-City. So very early on in the planning process, but stay tuned. We'll definitely be happy to share information about this meeting as it moves forward. On the next slide, we have another initiative that we actually just started a few months ago, which is having guest speakers at our meetings. So our committee meets quarterly with a meeting that's generally open to anyone who wants to attend at the same week as the annual meeting, so usually in January. For this new series, though, we invited guest speakers Sarah Perfader, who is the National Weather Service Winter Weather Services Program Manager, and Doug Hildebrand, who is the NWS Preparedness and Resilience Program Lead. They were interested in talking with our committee because they wanted to reach out to the transportation community about their snow squall warning product. This is a new product that NWS has only had for a couple of years. And it really has a transportation focus because it's related to the suddenness and the reduction of visibility that a sudden snow squall along the roadways can provide. So one issue they've been having is that we're getting alerts like this on our phones through the wireless emergency alert system, but it's more pertinent to folks who are either outside or out on the road. So we had a really good discussion about what this product is, the intention for this warning product, and then also how they might better communicate this product to drivers who are out on the road in cab. And so this is a new activity that we're starting where we would like to invite folks to come talk with our committee at each meeting, either transportation folks interested in reaching out to the weather community or weather folks who are interested in reaching out to the transportation community for some of these cross-disciplinary applications. So if you're interested in something like this, I'd be happy to just shoot me an email and I'd be happy to get you on an agenda for one of our next meetings. On the next slide is 4 other initiatives that we are working on this year. One's been in the works for a couple of years now. It's basically a one-stop shop for research references related to road weather. So we're working with Federal Highways and TRB Road Weather Committee to have this website where relevant research can be shared, as well as institutions and organizations and entities that are doing this research. It's a way for us all to keep on top of what kind of research is going on in the road weather community, who is doing this research, and then a resource for anyone looking for collaborations across different entities, and also for students who are interested in graduate programs related to road weather or job opportunities in the public and private and academic sectors. We also really need to update our committee website. I have controls to do that now, so we're working on that. We're under the Board on Economic Enterprise Development at the AMS, and other committees that are on that board are energy, renewable energy, finance, and blue economy, which has to do with moving goods along the ocean and shipping. And when I first started attending the board meetings, these other committees were really interested in all the overlap with surface transportation weather. So we're working on getting some better cross-committee collaborations and activities. And then finally, we're interested in the space. We focus on the surface space with roads, and there's also controlled aviation space. But there's going to be this new space kind of in between where urban air mobility, moving goods or maybe people in the future will be happening. So we wanted to do some work in that area and make some connections, both in the transportation community, aviation, weather, et cetera. So on the next slide, our final initiative is we do have a subcommittee called the Mobile Observation Subcommittee, where they're really focused on some of the items we've talked about today, which are getting observations off of vehicles, either from externally mounted sensors or from the vehicle itself, maybe from the CAN bus. Their main focus in the past year has been working to identify the sources of production of mobile observations at the state OTs. So who's doing what and what are they producing? So to this end, the subcommittee sent out 44 questionnaires with a response from 24 state DOTs, 20 of which are collecting mobile observations, which is a really good number of DOTs working on this. All 20 of them were observing pavement temperature, 95% were observing air temperature, and 65% were observing relative humidity, and 60% friction. However, of all these observations that are being gathered, only 15 to 20% of the entities are actually sending the data somewhere like MDSS, which is a meteorological observation distribution system run by NOAA, or the Weather Data Environment, which has been set up by Federal Highway Administration. And so since this is a low percentage of what's getting out into the community, the plan is to kind of drill down more into this, generate some more discussion, and see if there's a way to facilitate sharing observations across entities and across the community. So thank you so much for all your time. On the next slide is some contact information for me. If you would like to be a guest speaker at one of our meetings, participate as a member of the committee in the future, be a presenter at the annual meeting, need some more information about the call for papers or any information about the upcoming AV Summit or really anything, please feel free to email me.
Amanda, thank you so much for providing us a briefing on the activities of the AMS. I know it's really unfortunate that the AMS annual meeting lines up on top of the TRB meeting as often as it does. But I think through your efforts, your liaison efforts, and with Paul, I think we can maintain a very nice contact between the two groups. So thank you again for providing us with your briefing. Next up is the APWA Snow and Ice Committee. Matt Moriam from the City of St. Paul Public Works is the committee liaison on the SICOP Steering Committee. So Matt, if you'd like to take us through APWA's activities, we'd be grateful.
Thank you so much. Yes, as Rick mentioned, my name is Matt Morium. I work with the City of St. Paul. I manage winter operations here in the capital city of Minnesota. And I'll just go through a briefing, maybe a little bit of more education than in past years on this update, just because I haven't talked to folks in a while. And so you can go to the next slide, Rick. Can everybody see this okay? For whatever reason, this is zoomed out a little bit, Rick. Can you zoom in?
Yeah, let me work on it.
Okay, so just first off, I just wanted to give some general information. APWA, we have about 30,000 members in APWA. In general, as a subcommittee, we are a subcommittee of the Transportation Committee. We've stayed a subcommittee over the decades. To be a little bit more flexible and nimble and to accomplish the goals that our subcommittee has, which are pretty well aligned with many of the goals that SICOP has and many of the organizations that have briefed previously. One of maybe the bigger differences is the active training and educational opportunities that we're involved with, both as the subcommittee and APWA, the organization in general. I will just say, and just kind of take a pause right here, I'm generally the only local guy that is involved with a lot of these things, and maybe some people are wondering why the heck am I here, or when I'm at the maintenance meeting. My response usually is, and people have probably heard this before, regardless of the federal government, state DOT, city of 200 or 300,000, we have way more similarities than differences, and we all have a common goal of providing the best possible level of service to our customers, which tend to be our citizens in general. So as a subcommittee, we have 22 members. Most members are very active, and I'll get into some of the things that we do as a subcommittee. We have members mostly from public agencies, but we also have some consultants and some nonprofit organizations. As with some of the other committees that have briefed, we also do have a friends of the committee. There's only, I think there's less than 10. So not a huge group of friends, not that we're not friendly. And with that, we also are kind of guided by the leadership with the APWA staff. There's a couple names right there. Our chairperson, which is Dan Shocker from the Alaska DOT. Many of you are familiar with him. And then myself has been recently appointed to co-chair for the subcommittee. You can go to the next slide. So we were virtual until this last April. We did, actually last August was the main APWA conference. So I'll get into that in just a little bit, but our first in-person snow conference, North American Snow Conference and subcommittee meeting was held in Pittsburgh this last April. We had 23 people in person. We had 4 remote attendees. We had all APWA president and senior leadership were there, which was great. One of the things I just want to note, we recognize 2 of our long-term committee members that have recently retired from their jobs. Some of you may know them as they worked for very major cities. Mike Kennedy with the city of Minneapolis, Pat Kennedy with the city of Denver, recently retired and then retired from the committee as well. We wish them well. And most of our discussion in this last subcommittee revolved around future presentation submission and making sure that the content of the North American Snow Conference and the education that we provide is relevant, and which we always believe it does, but making sure that we're continuing to get very high quality submissions. So part of that is we've looked at a couple changes. One of the bigger ones is having a much longer submission period. Our submission period is actually open right now, and it's going to be open till I believe the end of September. So anybody that's interested in submitting anything for a presentation, I've heard a couple people on these briefs that I kind of was like, hey, that would be a good presentation. So I might be reaching out to a couple folks because that's kind of part of what we do as the subcommittee members is kind of try to find things that would be interesting to our members. We also deal with working with the reporter articles and do a click, listen, learn, which is basically an online training thing that is very specific to winter maintenance in the fall as we prepare for the winter. Like this meeting, we have liaison reports out from Clear Road, SICOP, TRB, LTAP, all those. We have members that are involved with those committees as well as this one. Next slide. So as I mentioned, this last couple months ago now, we had our North American Snow Conference in Pittsburgh. That's basically 3 days of presentations. We have the big ones that we had were the calibration and liquids presentations, which we've had the liquids presentations, a series of presentations now for a few years. Actually, pre-COVID was the first year that we did that. We do have our supervisor and our newer operator certificate programs. Those both were at the snow conference and both were very well attended. You can see the future snow conferences will be in the middle of the country the next couple years. So if you have the opportunity to attend, please do so. They have a very good equipment showroom floor. This last one was pretty interesting as we haven't been in person for a few years. So there was a bunch of new things that people were very interested in. Next slide. Just to touch on the main conference that APWA have is called the PWX. This encompasses everything, including winter maintenance. We will be holding a subcommittee meeting at this event. It will be both in person and virtual. So if you're wanting to attend, whether it's in person or virtual, please let me know. I forgot to put an email at the end, so I'll put my email in the chat if you are interested in any of this or have any other questions. And you can see the future expos there as well in San Diego and Chicago. So again, this is a more general broad event that has leadership type training. There is some winter maintenance, stormwater, everything to do with public works. Next slide, Rick. So just to touch on a couple of the main things that we do as far as education and outreach. These are two of the big programs that we do is the Winter Maintenance Supervisor Certificate and the Operator Certificate, which we'll talk about in a little bit. So these are the Supervisor Certificate is geared towards supervisors and is an 8-hour certificate program that includes all different types of topics from operations to weather to planning to preseason type stuff, everything in between. This is most effective in person as we have that dialogue. I think everybody kind of agrees with a lot of these type of trainings, while the webinar type things reach more people. In my opinion, the in-person provides a little bit more feedback between attendees and questions. We do have pre-recorded versions that we recorded during COVID. Those are available on the APWA website to members. Just listed real quickly, I'm not going to go through the locations, but you can see all the different workshops that are scheduled right now. I think there's 10 or 12 different locations. So most of these workshops, we have subcommittee members that do these workshops that travel around the country, and then we typically bring in some local involvement with those training certificate programs. But they've been very well attended, and this has been going on for I think over 10 years now, and Wilf can correct me if I'm wrong. Yeah, it's a really good program. If you have any supervisors or anybody that may be a supervisor, I would recommend attending. Go to the next slide. Operator certificate is a newer certificate. A lot of times this is done in conjunction. It's a shorter program. It's a 4-hour certificate program geared towards operators. Again, same stuff, more effective in person. We do have a recorded version on the website. Again, you can see the locations. There's a couple more locations on that. as some of the locations wanted this training and not the supervisor training this time around. Next slide. So just so everybody's aware, we do update the workshop. Again, this is a huge part of our training and education that we put out as a subcommittee. And we do update this last go around as we kind of came out of the pandemic, as we are going to be doing more in-person sessions. We did hold a meeting, or employees or members held a meeting early March to review and update these certificate programs. So they are updated. There's very good content. There always has been good content, but yeah, obviously with any training program, you need to get that updated. We are looking into a workshop for liquids. We've been doing the liquids series of sessions at the North American Snow Conference and at the larger PWX. But we're looking for a workshop type thing for liquids, as it is basically one of the most well attended and most interested topics that we have in our programs. And I think the last slide, Rick, is just a bunch of other activities. I'm not going to go through these, but just to kind of hammer home the point of all the different subcommittee members. Dan put this together for our updates, and there's just a lot of involvement with the different committee members. I will note this last year, Wilf was recognized as a top 10 public works leader in APWA, which is a really big deal. So congratulations to Wilf. And yeah, I think that's all I had. Again, I put my contact information in the chat, and Rick did as well. And if you have any questions, please let me know. And that's it. Wilf, do you want to add anything, I guess?
No, I think you covered everything very thoroughly, Matt, as we had discussed.
Okay.
All right, Matt. Thanks so much for giving us a brief on what's happening with APWA. True to form, we want to take a short stretch break. Our next presentation is with the Community of Practice on Road Weather Management, chaired by Steve Cook from the Michigan DOT. Steve, if you're ready to go, I'll advance the slides for you.
Okay, thank you, Rick. Can you see me and hear me? Thank you, Rick, for having me. So I am one of two chairs of the Community of Practice on Road Weather Management. Joy Sagel's the other chair. We are a branch of the AASHTO Committee on Transportation System Operations. So the CTSO Committee, we are one of several committees, subcommittees within that committee. So the Community of Practice on Road Weather Management, if you're not familiar with it, we promote and implement road weather management solutions and strategies to minimize the impacts of weather events on transportation system operations to increase safety and mobility. So that's our mission statement. Just thought I'd throw it out there. We do exist, and we do have an order. We have a purpose and a strategic areas of focus that we follow. So what I'm going to do today is kind of show you what we've been doing over the last about a year or so. A couple accomplishments that we're pretty proud of. But boy, I'm watching all these presentations. I'm almost thinking, Rick, we need a synthesis of everything that's going on in all these different committees to figure out what road weather management is doing, and maybe coalesce some of this stuff to come up with some good ideas and solutions for mitigating the problem of snow and ice and things that go on out there on the road. So a little bit about where we're at. This is kind of a roadmap that kind of displays where we were and where we're going, and where we've been. So down the lower left, you'll see that we had a peer exchange back in summer 2019. Just prior to that, we're at the Beckman Center in 2018 trying to figure out, our strategic purpose, and of course, our mission statement, those kind of things. So once we solidified that, we decided we need this peer exchange to figure out, the top 3 or 4 things we wanted to work on this committee. Well, one of them, just above that, the summer of 2020, we proposed a research needs statement to the CTSO committee on real-time warnings and variable speed limits. And more importantly, the driver behavioral aspects of why people do what they do and why they react to some things and some things they don't, why they pay attention and sometimes ignore. So that research needs statement was developed into an RFP that went out last December as the NCHRP 3-142, evaluating the impacts of real-time warnings and variable speed limits on safety and travel reliability during events. There was a panel that was selected. There was a vendor that was selected in February, Marchish, and I believe this past spring they were in the process of developing their work plan. RNelson is actually part of that panel. So that's what I have on the update on that. And then a result of that, over the last year or so during COVID, we had a lot of virtual meetings, stakeholder meetings. The big thing that we really kicked off was this listening session that we did in spring of 2021 to determine user needs and requirements for an abbreviated concept of operations for real-time warnings and variable speed limits. So what we're trying to do is figure out if you're going to implement something like this on a corridor, what are the user needs, what are the use cases, and in trying to match the user needs to requirements. So that first listening session looked at a bunch of prompting questions to about 15 subject matter experts around the country. We developed a draft concept of operations and requirements document in summer, fall of 2021. We reconvened in fall of 2021, November-ish, to have another listening session to validate the user needs with the requirements and to go through the document to make sure that we had everything we needed. The document was published in February 2022 and is housed on our MDOT website right now. I'll talk more about that in a second here. So a little bit more about that ConOps. So next slide, Rick. Yeah, so it's called an abbreviated ConOps because it's not the 500-page or 200-page document. This is about a 40-page document. The real, where the rubber hits the road is the last maybe 4 to 6 pages where we have these tables define the user needs, the use cases, the design requirements, and the requirements that match the user needs. So I'll show you, I'll briefly show you that at the end. So the purpose was to develop a template for road weather management users, stakeholder user needs, use cases for corridor, for prioritization on corridor, design consideration, requirements, and justification for investment. So it was developed by 2 listening sessions, one in April and one in November. Again, the prompting kind of questions that we asked, this is just kind of an example. You know, why did you deploy a real-time warning VSL in this corridor? What were the first steps taken for planning and development? The technology, the functionality. Again, the ConOps is a stakeholder validation system that we did in the second listening session to make sure the user needs did match the requirements. So next one. So the basic concept was basically formed around these 3 ideas. It was how to collect data, you know, the remote sensing, cameras, traffic data, crowdsourcing, and then processing the data, you know, what kind of software tools that you need on the back end to make sure you can get to the next step, which is sharing the information, you know, either in static signs or dynamic messages or variable speed limits. Defines the technical limitations the agency must accept. So it really gives them guidelines as to if you're going to deploy it here, make sure it's the right place to do it and what you need to implement going forward for the design and construction of a system like this. So the next slide, Rick. So that's the document there. That's just the title sheet. It outlines, again, the purpose and need for real-time warning and VSL, the checklist of design consideration. It defines the building blocks for this system. It lists the requirements that support the defined user needs and each use case. So I'll show you a little brief example of what I mean by that. Again, it was validated by our subject matter experts and stakeholders. It was published on our website as an MDOT document in February 2022. That's because Cambridge Systematics, our contractor internally, helped us develop this. But next slide going forward, I'll show you what we're going to try to do with this. So real quick, This is just an example of what one of the tables might look like, the system requirements. It specifies requirements for collection, processing, distribution, and other parts of the system like power and comm. It talks about operation and maintenance. It talks about funding for operation and maintenance. It talks about calibration. It talks about all these things that you're going to need to make sure this is a sustainable deployment for the long haul. Each requirement is traceable back to your user needs, and we have 46 requirements. So the table would look like this. It would show a requirement, it would show the type of requirement, and then it traces back to the user needs. And the user needs is a separate table above that. So you can kind of see what each of these, like user need 1, user need 2, user need 3 would be, and how it matches to a specific requirement. Again, 46 requirements, 9 were focused on data collection, 14 were focused on data processing, 14 were focused on information distribution, and 9 are focused on supporting the infrastructure itself. Next slide, Rick. So this is my last slide. The next steps going forward, the CONOPS was published as a Michigan document. As I said, it's public facing on our TSMO website. If you go to that website right there, it'll pop right up in front of you as a link. Our strategic plan is a link above that, and then right below that is the CONOPS, abbreviated CONOPS link. It's a PDF. You can download it, have a quick look at it. Again, if you don't have a lot of time to go through it, I would encourage you to go to the last 4 or 5 pages and just glance at those tables and see if that doesn't kind of jive with your thinking on how you might deploy a system like this. So looking forward, can this document be, how can this document better reach the community? In other words, how can we get it out to the users? So my plan this fall, the first week of September, is our AASHTO-CTSO committee in Arizona. My plan is to ask the committee if this should be a AASHTO publication, and if it can be developed into one, how might that happen? So again, try to get this out more nationally and get it more widespread as far as PR on this. How can we continue to educate the education campaign and spread knowledge on next generation application? Types of topics for a potential listening session, and actually we had this listening session. It's our 3rd listening session. We just had it last Wednesday. We had about 15 subject matter experts again, and we looked at a whole grocery list of ideas for research and solutions for road weather management, and we ranked those on this Mentimeter. So it was actually an interactive listening session like we've had before. Pretty successful. I was very happy with the outcome. So we're just starting now to look at this. Maybe, I don't even know if it's a top 10 list, as I show there, of activities, webinars, projects, and research. So going forward, we are going to compile that and then decide what our next steps will be based on this last listening session that we just had. So probably more to come on that and that outcome at the CTSO committee in September. Beyond that, that's it, Rick. I think that's my last slide.
Thanks a lot, Steve. Appreciate filling us in on what's happening with the community of practice.
Welcome.
Good work. Good work. I did post that website link there in the chat pod. If anybody wants to click on to that, I encourage you to go out there and do that. It's a very good document that's out there. Next on tap is the Professional Snowfighters Association. Wilf Nixon, the PSA president, is up. And Wilf, the floor is yours.
Thanks very much, Rick. Thank you all for being here this morning. Great chance to talk with you all. Of course, for some of us, it's now afternoon. Rick, if we could go on to the next slide, that would be awesome. And I think the next one after this as well. Okay, just talking about our mission, as I think most of you will know, back in 2019, the SALT Institute dissolved, and that left a gap in winter maintenance education, if you will. The SALT Institute for a number of years had published various guides, smart salting, or safe and sustainable snow fighting, safe and sustainable snow storage. And the Professional Snowfighters Association was created to try and fill that gap by creating a community of practice open to all the players within the winter maintenance community. So if we can go to the next slide, please, Rick. We're looking not just for agency members, but also vendors and industry, and we have a number of individual members as well who support through their engagement and advice and just general all-around activities. So next slide, please, Rick. The benefits are very much focused on training and information. So we have a number of training materials, we provide webinars and workshops, and we also have a self-assessment tool that is available for agencies. And of course, going forward, we're always looking to develop other things as well. So if we can go to the next slide. Training materials, we've had these ever since we were created, a series of one-pagers that are designed, if you will, to be able to print off and stick on the break room table for your folk to take a look at and give them a very brief background into items. It might be something like calibration, it might be something like pre-wetting, anti-icing, liquid-only routes, whatever it might be. Access to reports, trying to make sure that many of those research documents and reports of one sort or another are available as broadly as possible. In some cases, we're linking directly, for example, to the Clear Roads website. In other cases where it's perhaps a more obscure document, we actually have that document up on the site. And a new development in the training materials is what I've called the Chicago opportunity. And if we can go to the next slide, Rick, please, thanks. You may or may not be aware that a number of areas in and around Chicago, municipalities, are now under a variance agreement with the Illinois EPA. It's over a 15-year period, and basically they have 15 years to bring chloride levels in various waterways in the area down below critical levels, and they have committed to get themselves there by implementing a number of what I think we would consider fairly low-level technology in terms of good practice. Things such as calibration, things such as storing salt properly under cover, things such as pre-wetting your salt. We're in the process of creating training around these basics, making it simple and easy to do. One of the challenges, and you know, APWA, as Matt mentioned, I've been involved with them as others have in creating their certificate programs, which are wonderful tools. But at 4 hours for the operators and 8 hours for the supervisors, they're not short. And it's sometimes difficult to maintain people's interest. So we're looking at a different way, not saying that one is better than the other, but going with shorter, maybe nothing longer than 20 minutes on a given topic that would allow people very, very simply and straightforwardly to get themselves up to date on what they need to do at this very low level. A couple of links included here. If you want to find out more about what's going on in that Chicago area, what the variances they're under, and I'm viewing this as an opportunity for agencies to, if you will, inoculate themselves from future variances. If you're already doing the things, you shouldn't be creating the problems that they found in that Chicago area. If we can go to the next slide, please, Rick. Webinars and seminar workshops, the old model, pre-COVID, of course, we did workshops, various locations, getting in experts in and so on and so forth. Basically, all we did during COVID was add webinars into the mix as well. We're in the process of planning some workshops for the fall. One will be in the Chicago area. The other we're still trying to nail down, but we're looking somewhere not quite as far north as that. And then the webinars, we've had a good run of those and we're continuing. They're open to everybody at no charge, but only our members can get to the recordings or sponsor a webinar. So the next slide, please, Rick. The webinars have done well. We've had 19 wide range of winter maintenance topics, average attendance 108. The fun thing I find is the tool we use measures how engaged our attendees are, which I think means it lets you know if they're busy playing solitaire or doing their emails. We'll be doing those going forward on an as needed basis, and I hope that's going to be a tool that continues to be of value to the winter maintenance community. Next slide, please, Rick. The self-assessment tool, this is primarily for agencies. It's tied to an award program. It's built around various work that was done when sustainability first broke on the scene back in the early 2000s as it applied to winter maintenance. And it's in essence a series of yes/no questions in a bunch of different areas. If we could go to the next slide, please, Rick. These are the areas. It's trying to be comprehensive. So yes, it covers basic things like salt storage, but it also covers things like mobile data and community outreach. So it's very broad. The expectation is not that any agency would score 100%. It allows an agency to take a snapshot of where they are, see what they're doing well, see where they might have areas where there's low-hanging fruit readily available to them. So that's something that is available to our members. And next slide, please, Rick. Sort of questions on salt storage you might see. Is your site designed so that rainwater and meltwater cannot flow onto the salt storage pad? It's a simple question. If you have a well-designed facility, the answer is going to be yes. Next slide, please, Rick. Other stuff, one of the basics is, of course, making sure that we keep our ear to the ground and hear who's doing what, hence meetings like today. We're doing our best through the various links that we have to raise concerns that we've heard about from our members in the field. The two most recent have been health impacts on plow operators, and that's been picked up by others and they're running with that now. And then also COVID impacts on agencies. There was both good news and bad news. From that, there were practices that were learned and will be carried forward, and there were practices that were experienced and will not. And knowing what those are good, and just basically doing our best to remain plugged into the winter maintenance community. And I think, Rick, at this point, that gets us to the end of it. There might be one more slide with contact information, and then probably another slide with a questions thing. But again, happy to take any questions, and thank you for the time.
Well, thanks so much for filling us in on what's happening with the Professional Snowfighters Association. As always, great stuff. And again, I want to thank you for filling us in. There's
Thanks.
Your question slide. If anybody has a question for Wilf, please feel free to put it in the chat pod. And as I mentioned before, this slide deck will be available on the SICOP website as well as the recording. So next in line is FHWA Road Weather Management Program. Tony Coventry is with FHWA's Road Weather Management team. And Tony, the floor is yours.
Thanks. As Will said, I was checking my email and, playing solitaire. Sometimes my inbox actually looks like a game of solitaire. So appreciate it. So so if you go to the next slide, I'm happy to give a quick update on what we're working on at the Federal Highways Road Weather Management Program. Next slide kind of gives an update of the research that we're working on. The big one, I guess, right now is adaptive route optimization. So we've completed the concept of operations and the requirements and specifications documents. They're currently going through the HPA process of approval to get those published. But I will tell you that one of the biggest findings I think that we found going through this initial part of the engineering process of putting this kind of research together was that there's considerable need for significant infrastructure and data requirements. So one example is that, you know, in order to do something like adaptive route optimization, you need a really significant AVL program, because of course you need to know where your vehicles, your trucks are in order to tell them where to go. So some of the agencies have those kinds of infrastructure in place, but some of them don't quite yet, or they have some smaller scale that would be needed for it. So it was interesting to find some of those findings as we went through what this would look like. And then, of course, this year, we're going to launch at the end of the year, the phase 2 of this research, which will focus mostly on the feasibility, given the findings we found in the first part, whether or not we're ready to do these things, and then sort of engage with potential users that might be able to, or that might have some of that infrastructure in place to sort of test it out and see what we can do to further the development of the adaptive route optimization. So look forward to those documents that are coming out shortly. And we'll be talking a little bit more when they come out about some more details in the findings there as well. And then the second thing that's been going on for a while is the integrated modeling for road condition prediction, or IMRCP, which I've talked about many times. There's actually a SICOP Talk podcast where one of the project leads and myself gave some overview of the program as it is this year. This will be the second hurricane season that the system will be tested in the Louisiana area. I'm not hoping for a hurricane, but if one comes by, it will be interesting to see how that system works and prepares them for those types of non-winter events. And then, of course, we just finished up the winter in the Ohio northern region using the system, and we're now evaluating some of the feedback we got from the users that used that during the winter, and we'll be putting out those results shortly as well. And then we also found out that we now do have congressional funding to execute a phase 5, which we haven't quite figured out exactly what we're going to do, but we think we're going to try to make this a bigger regional sort of deployment of the solution. We have multiple agencies and potentially multiple states interacting with the program. So we'll see where that goes. And then AVAW was completed last summer, and we've talked a little bit about this. And that final report is also being, right now it's going through the sort of 508 remediation to get approved to be published, and that should be out in the next couple of months. And we're conducting outreach on that research as well. And then the newest research that's coming up this year is Climate Change Risk Assessment Guide. So this is a new project that I think I'll be heading up to look at where, with the new increased adverse, sort of severe weather events, what the risks are. Have they changed in terms of our assets and our infrastructure? And potentially creating a guide to be able to assess new risks because of climate change. So that's where we are with research. The next slide, Rick, is talking about some of the existing programs. So we're continuing to support the weather data environment. Many of you are part of the weather data environment. Either you use the data in your research or you contribute your weather ESS data to the weather data environment, as well as your mobile data to the weather data environment. We renewed our support for this for at least the next 2 years. It's actually a 5-year contract with the options. But the idea is that the weather data environment will feed into MDO, which I'll talk about in a second. So that's going to be this managing disruptions of operations data. That's the data set we formerly used to call NRED. Now we're calling it MDO because it takes in a lot of more data sets than just the weather data. And I'll talk about that in a bit. And then we're still using the user stakeholder group. We're going to set something up for July, so look for that. I think we've already sent out a when is good. So if you're on that group, look for that to be scheduled. If you're interested in being in that user group, let me know. You can email me. And then we're also supporting Pathfinder. Alaska is working on creating a Pathfinder program for them. They actually have that scheduled for, I think, July or August to do their workshop. And then I've heard that Maine DOT is still interested. And if you're interested in Pathfinder, let me know. I can certainly set up a workshop for you as well. And then IMO. So I've been talking a lot about this actually lately because there's some significant stick grants going out. If you're interested in adding mobile observations to your program, we have some funding that you can use to build that program out as well. So also let me know if you're interested in that as well. And then of course we finished the National Highway Interstate Road Weather Course, Principles and Tools of Road Weather Management. This is available, right now it's available for free on the NHI website. So if you have new people that you want to sort of introduce them to the concepts and principles of road weather management, I suggest you have them take that course. It's about a 3 or 4 hour course. It's pretty immersive into all the different tools that are available and kind of how we do road weather management and how weather impacts our roads. So it's a good tool to send some new people to, or even as a refresher for some of your old guys too. All right, so that's where we are with the programs, and then outreach is the next slide. So we launched the Spotlight webinar series. We've had the first 2, which have been pretty successful on, and the idea behind Spotlight webinar series is we're talking about current events or issues that are challenges to the road weather community. We are scheduling this for like the first Wednesday of each month. The one coming up in July, we're going to be talking about training for upcoming winter weather training. So we have a really good set of guests for that. So if you're interested in learning more about what training opportunities are available for your agency, I would suggest signing up for that webinar series. It's on the NOCO website. You can sign up for, or shoot me an email and I'll send you a link to it. We are planning on having a stakeholder meeting in the spring. Now it's called the 2022 stakeholder meeting, but it'll actually be held in 2023. I should probably change that. And right now we're looking at partnering with the National Weather Service and using their training center. I think we've had this there in the past. So it's not a new venue, but it's actually really conducive to what we're trying to do. And so look for some more details on that to come out for the spring after the winter to kind of get together and have the stakeholder meeting we've had in the past. And then of course, we're still doing the weather data user environment group that I talked about earlier to sort of keep that going and growing. And then of course, we'll be attending the AASHTO committee on maintenance. I think Brad, or I can't remember if it was Caleb or Brad was talking about that earlier. We'll be at that conference talking about some of this research as well. And then we have a bunch of new fact sheets coming out on different things, different kind of technologies. So we're putting one out on the IMO program that City of Fort Collins did, the AVAW research, some things Kevin Doobie was doing with the National Weather Service and part of their Pathfinder messaging. So look for those to come out. They're going through the process of getting approved, and then when they're available, we'll publish them and make them available and send out notices to you through the newsletter that we've been working in. And then finally, the infrastructure law. The biggest component of this project was the data integration pilot project. And so right now we're working on trying to put that together. It's not trivial. And we're going to look at managing disruptions in operations MDO data. So what you used to know, we used to talk about as NRED, non-recurring event data. It's now going to become managing disruptions in operations data. And the idea is we're going to combine weather data, work zone data, and incident management data all into one data set that can be accessed and sort of cross-referenced and be a tool for several different applications we're working on right now. So that's where we are from the outreach side. And that's sort of the update from the Federal Highway. There's some contact information. If you have any questions or you're interested in any of the things I was talking about in more detail, please reach out to myself or David. We'd be happy to talk to you about what we're doing.
All right. Thanks, Tony. Appreciate the update from FHWA. Awesome stuff going on. So our next presentation is No Boundaries. It's a pooled fund that was developed to fill in the gaps of some of these other pooled funds that we've been hearing about. And today, Doug Groover from the Ohio DOT and Heath Patterson from the Mississippi DOT are going to be briefing us up on the activities of No Boundaries.
Thanks a lot, Rick. Brian, I guess we're going to pull up some slides real quick. I guess as we get those pulled up, there they are. Appreciate the opportunity, letting us jump on here and do a quick briefing of what No Boundaries is. I am a state maintenance engineer for the Mississippi DOT, and as Caleb mentioned at the beginning of this meeting, represent Region 2 for SICOP. And as most of y'all know, Mississippi is the snow capital of the United States. Rick, you can go to the next slide, or Brian. So real quick, what No Boundaries is, going over sort of what we're going to talk about, and we're going to fly through these to not hold us up here at the end of this meeting. But some of the highlights on how we push around these innovations, as Rick mentioned, it sort of fills in some of the other gaps of non-winter maintenance operations, even though we do tend to lean into winter sometimes. We try not to, as a matter of fact. So through peer information, the innovation database that we'll talk about, as well as a synthesis that we have sort of piggybacked with some of our partnerships with Clear Roads. Next slide. So the purpose is just to maintain that community of practice across all maintenance professionals around the country. We like to link into APWA as much as possible, but it's predominantly DOTs. We identify those innovative technologies. All DOTs innovate in one way or another. Many states have an innovation program. My state happens to be one that does not. And so we try to lean on those states that are bringing these initiatives forward. Next slide. So again, we complement the MAC. We've presented in several technical working groups within the AASHTO MAC group, as well as the innovation initiative from AASHTO. But as I said, we focus on more spring, summer, and fall. We're kind of a 4-season topics. We cover all 4 seasons, like workforce and contracting. That sort of bleeds over into winter maintenance. But for all other non-winter specific topics, it is kind of what we focus on. Next slide. Some of our goals, again, help members such as my state to help share those innovations in equipment, materials, and processing, to increase the network of collaboration again amongst those agencies, and those consistent activities that what's working and what doesn't. Next slide. So in-person meetings that are facilitated through this pooled fund are very important, as most of the groups that have briefed out here know that in-person meetings, I know that some were talking about they've actually put a hold on certain conferences because they couldn't do it in person. They felt like that was important. We do as well. We like to really suss out these innovations that are brought forward. Every state sort of goes around the room and has their sort of top 5 that they try to present. And we'll talk about how we sort of collect all those in a large database form. But obviously all innovation is to increase and minimize duplication and maximize the efficiency. We can go to the next slide, or Brian, sorry. Doug, I will turn it over to you for this slide.
All right. Thanks, everyone. I'm Doug River. I'm a District 8, which is Southwest Ohio, Highway Management Administrator here for ODOT. So been involved with No Boundaries since about 2016, but a little bit of its history going back to 2011. It was really thought of by a small group of states to boost these relationships of some DOT state members, build synergy, as the slide says, and as Heath alluded to, not reinventing the wheel. If some of our boots on the ground are developing a better mousetrap, let's make sure we're sharing all that information. And a lot of the homegrown, off-the-shelf innovations, solutions, and really what's great, especially when we're in person, talk about, does this thing really work? Does this product work? Has anyone else tried it? Or various things, so we're not duplicating efforts. And initially had 8 member states, with Missouri and Ohio have been previous lead states, and currently it is led by the state of Colorado DOT. So next slide. Today we've grown to 21 member states. Our focus areas are core maintenance activities, so bridges, pavements, operations, roadside, asset management. We talk about that a little bit for maintenance. A recurring theme at almost every meeting, or probably anywhere all of you go today, is training, recruitment, retention. Everybody's struggling with the getting good employees and keeping them. But if you take nothing else from this, presentation, the maintainroads.org, please check out the website. There's a ton of great information out there. Everything that's included here that we're briefing you on today, but a lot of really good topics and slides and other reports that we've done. So we do 2 meetings annually to provide peer exchanges and weekly news posts. So the CTC currently manages the program for us. They do a great job of kind of filtering through, some highlights that might come out of AASHTO research or some other state research program where like, hey, Missouri has developed a great way to crack seal or whatever, and we get that kind of thrown to your inbox. Just a great way to kind of focus some highlights of things going on nationally. And then, of course, one of the great things, you build relationships with all the people here in this slide, and you can very quickly, do informal surveys of peer agencies. We've got kind of an email group going and be like, hey, have any of you tried, portable rumble strips? And then you quickly get some response back. So it's just great having those resources. Next slide. So currently, this is just a map showing our locations and how we are spread pretty much across the country. The states there in blue are states that are currently member states that do send folks and actively participate. And the dots are where we have actually held our peer exchange, in-person meetings. So we've tried to get those all spread out. The next one being hopefully here coming up in the fall will be up in New York State for the first time, but we've kind of been all across the country, so that makes it really nice to do that. Next slide. And back to Heath.
Thanks, Doug. So yeah, as I mentioned, our current partners are, of course, Federal Highway, as this is a federal pooled fund. AASHTO, we are tied in with the MAC group more directly than any others, as we are Maintenance Innovations. TRB, APWA, Farm Raised Community College is a more recent partner that has developed a maintenance associate's degree that's offered nationwide, and you can check those guys out for more information on that. But also, of course, Clear Roads, which I'm sure most on this meeting are familiar with. Next slide. So some of our highlighted activities and resources, just to kind of wrap it all up here. Next slide. Again, we do promote that peer information sharing. It's typically a 3-day peer exchange. We most recently were in Caltrans. They put on an amazing 3 days of making some of us pretty jealous of what they have there as far as their fabrication shop for equipment. And they were putting together pretty much from a chassis, their snowplow, dump truck sort of combination equipment, and it was really very impressive how they have innovated through that whole process of an assembly line, that much like somebody in the private sector would be on the cutting edge of those innovations. But also technical presentation. Again, we focus on a lot of the things that they were doing. We've focused on drones. I heard one of the presentations here earlier mention the Ann Arbor, the M-City. I remember us meeting there one time back when UAS programs were first becoming a thing. I think there's a lot of state DOTs that have implemented those at a pretty high level into their programs at this point. And so years ago, this group was kind of on the cutting edge of that. But the innovation show and tell, usually the host state gets to bring a lot, but all the partnering states sort of bring something to the table, and that is always interesting to see. Next slide. Again, the roundtable discussions, it's again, what's working for you? What have you done new? What's not working for you? One of our hottest topics right now is the impact on the new CDL requirements that have gone into effect this past February. We're kind of wrapping up a synthesis that's going to go out and get some more information on sort of the community of practice and what everyone's doing. I know as our state, we have tapped into some of the work that Clear Roads has done on that training in particular, but we found out through No Boundaries. So again, the technical site visits for a poor state like us, it's just something to make us pretty jealous. But they're Caltrans did an amazing job. Next slide. I'll turn it back over to you, Doug.
All right, so probably one of my favorite parts of the whole No Boundaries program or project is what I would say is our easiest to use and coolest product that we put out there. So like I say, go to the website, the maintainroads.org, and click on that innovation database. And there you'll see there's just a snapshot there on the right side of the screen, just showing all these different things. There's a little card there, and then if you want more information, you can click on it. They're sortable and so on as well. Brian's put that in the chat box, and everything from a mechanic figured out a better way to weld something onto a hitch, and now he can use it to move things around the yard. Just making their life easier, all the way up through wrong way warning systems that we have here in Ohio to processes, who's got a good process for employee onboarding, or basically just runs the whole gamut of everything we get into in as maintenance managers for DOTs. So do check that out. There's a lot of good stuff. I use it to kind of set some goals for I have a manager in every county that I deal with in my 7 counties, and I make it a goal. I'm like, find something on this innovation database that another state did, and put it into practice in your garage. So just some really good quick hit stuff there, and it's real easy to sort through and see all those. So next slide. And then you can actually create your own and put your own in if you've got something that you yourself or anybody in your area has done. You can put a simple form here to fill out. You can throw some photos on there, and it does get a little bit vetted by CTC and Associates, but and possibly our steering committee, if it's a question whether we want to put that on the website or not. But generally, people are uploading good stuff and can share those innovations with everyone in the nation. So, and a good part of our website is open to the public. In fact, the vast majority of it, as you click around, there might be some specific like meeting notes or something that might be closed to just members. But for the most part, all this stuff is open out there for anyone to click on. Next slide. So Heath mentioned at the start, so another great thing that comes out of No Boundaries is this ability to do short synthesis projects. So we have a very focused topic. The consultant and their sub-consultant team can quickly do a, what's the state of practice for this topic around the country, or, what things should we be looking out for, kind of like a SWOT analysis type thing. But so yeah, quick turnaround research projects. One we're all very interested in, and it kind of tagged on to the big Clear Roads research project about staffing shortages and changes in trends and so on. But this one, so we wanted to say that, that one's been out there for a little while, and really dig in, do some surveys, find out what are states actually doing, and has anyone found things that work? What are you actually seeing good benefit, return on investment type thing coming back to you? So that project is getting wrapped up and should be available. Actually, like it says there, before the July 2022 MAC meeting, and will be available on the No Boundaries website. And that should be, I believe, Brian, correct me if I'm wrong, that's available, that would be available to anybody, right? Not just member states? Correct, he says, okay, great. Next slide. So from these that project, some of the initial findings, most responding agencies have been short-staffed for 3 or more years. Of course, COVID didn't help anything. We all kind of knew that, but recruitment and retention strategies can certainly make a difference in how things work. A lot of agencies are establishing new training programs or expanding existing ones. Obviously, we had noted difficulty with attracting and retaining CDL holding staff. So one agency is considering a non-compete agreement, after employees obtain a CDL through agency provided training. And that's something actually ODOT just solidified with a letter of understanding with our bargaining unit, that we can hire our entry-level highway workers to be without a CDL, and then they have 1 year to get that CDL. And if they leave within 2 years, they have to pay that money back. That would be the cost of putting them through that training. And we do all that training in-house. But so there's good information like that all coming in this synthesis report. Next slide. So learn more. I know we flew through that. We knew it was, and that's fine. Just trying to wet your whistle, maybe pique your appetite a little bit for any of this information on No Boundaries. So visit the website, maintainroads.org. Check things out. And if you had any specific questions, I'm sure Heath or myself would be happy to answer. But like they said, I think this slide deck will be available for everyone. You can go back through at a later time if you want to explore things a little more deeply.
All right, outstanding. Any final words, Heath?
No, just thank you again for letting us brief, and again, shoot us some questions if you got anything you got. Yep, thank you.
All right, outstanding. Thanks, Doug. Thanks, Heath, for a great briefing on No Boundaries. Last in the lineup is Northwest Passage. Northwest Passage is another one of those consortia, and Dave Huff from South Dakota DOT is going to be making this briefing for us. Dave?
Yeah, thank you, Rick. Let's move into the slide. Yeah, I'm speaking on behalf of the Northwest Passage. It's a little bit different pool fund study in the sense that it's very geographical. It's concentrating on the corridor that constitutes I-90 and I-94, starting at Seattle in Washington State and extending through Minnesota. 7 states are in the consortium or in the pool fund study. We can go to the next slide. We've been a pool fund study since 2003. Minnesota DOT has been the lead state in the study all that time. We contribute funding each year, and with the funding, we sponsor small sort of focused research efforts. Our states that lie along I-90 and I-94 have a lot of common attributes. First of all, we have vast rural expanses. We're some of the lower density, population density states in the country. It's widely used by commercial and recreational traffic, though. We experience a lot of extreme weather conditions. We're the northmost tier of states across a good part of the country. And with that comes even road closures and, of course, intensive winter maintenance activities and management of the transportation network. Go ahead, Rick. The governance is by a steering committee that has one representative from each member state. We meet monthly by web meeting. We also have one face-to-face meeting each year. We met this year in Helena, Montana in April. The work of the group is really carried on by 2 task forces. One is called the Operations Task Force, and it has members from each of the states. There can be more than one member from each of the state. They meet 9 times a year by webinar and put on technical presentations, also kind of round robin discussions, sharing practices. The second task force is the Freight Task Force, and it likewise comprises members from the member states. It also has members from the trucking industry. So the trucking associations of some of the states participate in the Freight Task Force. And we meet periodically on freight focused projects as well, and initiate and conduct freight research. Next. So our focus is to develop effective methods for sharing, coordinating, and integrating traveler information, operational activities, and emergency technologies across our borders. And those 3 items, traveler information, operational activities, and emerging technologies, encompasses an awful lot. They're very, very open topics. And so our ranges of inquiry really span a pretty wide range. The next slide. This sort of lays out the territory in some circles here. And you can see that it's everything from planning kinds of activities to on the road operational activities, focusing on maintenance and operations, staffing and resources, some of the same topics that earlier presentations, including the last one, focused on as well. We try to maintain a corridor focus, so it's really looking at the topic in the perspective of the I-90 and I-94 corridor. Next. The benefits of participating are similar to what we just heard from No Boundaries, the peer contacts, close working efforts with our neighboring states and states on the corridors, good meetings, good information exchange. And one of the things that we try also to do is to involve people beyond are just the steering committee or the task force memberships. So if there are topics that are of interest to anybody in the DOTs, we invite others from the DOT to attend. So it's not just one or two people from the department that might be hearing about the topic, but maybe there are 5 or 6 or more that participate in it, depending on the topic. And I think one big advantage is just motivating and inspiring each other to try new things based on the experience of others who have tried and succeeded at new ideas. The next slide. A lot of our work is done by webinars, and these could be anything from quick 30-minute webinars to longer, more in-depth 90-minute webinars. Some of the topics that are listed there. We looked at some of MnDOT's AVL advancements recently, worker presence, detection methods. Minnesota and Washington State received work zone data exchange funding. And so we're focused on some of their experience and trying to learn as a group from what they learn in their participation. Others of us applied for grants, but they were the 2 states who received grants, and so we're wanting to learn together. North Dakota has activity going on autonomous attenuator and mower projects. And so again, the idea is to learn and share from each other. The next slide. The Operations Task Force is headed by Brandon Bisey of North Dakota DOT, and one of the things they do, and we have one coming up in August, is a Northwest Passage Technicians Forum. This is modeled after the Western States Forum that is held in California, Oregon, and Washington each year. And it's a way for real practical exchange of information. The 2021 presentations last year's focused on truck parking, on variable speed limit deployment, and wrong way detection. And the topics are being formulated for this year's presentations in August. Next slide. The Freight Task Force is really trying to build a freight community among the Northwest Passage states. And when I say freight community, I kind of say that intentionally because there are a lot of different kinds of people, everybody from people that are involved in freight policy or planning to people who are involved in permitting processes to enforcement processes, on the road operations. And so it's a pretty diverse group and good exchange of information, a lot of learning from each other in this group. And so some of the things we've got, some of the topics we've been looking at are truck parking and platooning, virtual weigh stations, and looking at streamlining electronic screening processes across state lines. The next one. Earlier today, there was mention of the winter performance measures, NCHRP project. The Northwest Passage took kind of a corridor look at our practices in measuring winter performance. We've just drafted a report on that, and we really would be interested in participating in the regional 1434 activities that are planned in the future. So really would appreciate keeping in touch with that. The next slide. And so we annually select what projects we're going to fund. So in the coming year, we'll be continuing work of the two task forces. Looking at the benefits of traveler information provided by DOTs, this is kind of in consideration of other sources of traveler information that have emerged. Another thing relating to those third-party sources is communicating route restrictions to third-party navigation providers. A lot of times the route restrictions are not communicated or maybe miscommunicated, resulting in movement difficulties. We're collaborating in our states to create a situation data exchange. The concept here is that all of us could put traveler information into that, and would be a clearinghouse where automotive manufacturers, any third-party service could acquire the traveler information in a standard format from that data exchange. And then we're continuing work looking at the work zone data initiative and also practices for expanding DOT travel information coverage, for example, not just for state highways, but maybe to tribal roads and National Park Service. So next slide. If you're interested in the pool fund study, any of the work, there is a pool fund study website, and all of the reports are available there. It is a corridor emphasis, but we would be certainly interested in extending the corridor eastward. And in fact, Wisconsin was a member at one time. And so if anyone is interested, please contact me. Thanks, Rick.
Dave, thanks so much for giving us a briefing. And, you know, even though it's a corridor focused and it's very geographically, you know, centered in that area, I think the kinds of things that you all are doing really do have applications in other places. And so not only is the work you're doing good, but the model that you've established is also an outstanding one for following corridors across state lines. So,
thanks, Rick.
Dave, thanks so much. That concludes the briefings. Before we adjourn, I'd like to turn it back over to Caleb and Brad for any final thoughts.
Rick, this is Brad. I just wanted to thank everybody for those excellent updates, and wanted to say that I'm looking forward to seeing a number of you in Washington, D.C. in July.
Again, I echo Brad's comments about the excellent presentations. I appreciate everybody sticking with us to get through these 3 segments. The recordings and the slide deck will be available shortly. I'll send you all emails for that. With that, we're going to go ahead and conclude this briefing for this year. For those of you coming to the Maintenance Committee meeting next month, I'll see you all there. With that, have a good day, everyone, and stay safe out there.